was a pretty cool guy. He lived from 1659 to 1695. So they're not exactly sure of how or of what his birth date is. And so we know that he died at the age of 35 or 36. He is from England and he is known as one of the greatest English composers. It was a very long time before anybody else emerged um, from England as someone amazing. And so everyone looked up to him for quite a while, even after his death. He was he was the organist at Westminster Abbey, which is that's a pretty famous place. However, he didn't start there. He was in His Majesty's chapel choir as a kid until his voice changed, and then he began to assist the organ builder. So he was in the choir that would sing for the king until his voice changed and he couldn't sing those pretty high notes anymore. And so then he became the organist helper. Um, and we're not entirely certain if this is true, but it's possible that he was writing music at the age of 9. Like, really amazing stuff as a 9-year-old. I mean, I could barely play like two hands on the piano at the age of 9. So that's pretty amazing. He wrote. No, I don't want to do an update later. Thank you. Okay, so um, he wrote opera and he wrote choral music and then other stuff, especially music for organ. Um, so he was the organist of the Chapel Royal, so the church of the king, plus Westminster Abbey at the same time, and he would write for the royal family. Um, so he died pretty young, like I said, at 35 or 36. And so the music that he wrote that was played for Queen Mary's funeral was played for his funeral. And they're not exactly certain of how he died. There's two theories. The first is that he stayed out late at an opera and came home late, and his wife locked him outside, and he couldn't get in, so he caught a cold, and then he died. The other theory is that he died from tuberculosis, but I would say that it was probably because he didn't communicate with his wife about whatever. So that's a lesson for you guys. Don't forget to talk to your spouse or your family. He was buried next to the organ at Westminster Abbey. And so you can actually visit his gravesite, which is in the church, and that was actually a normal thing to do back then. And that's a pretty honorable place for someone to be buried. A lot of composers, they end up with an unmarked grave because they're broke. But this guy, nope, they remembered him, and he was famous at the time, and he got a nice burial. His music was pretty influential to many English composers, including a guy named Benjamin Britten. And Benjamin Britten wrote this thing called Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, and he uses music by Purcell and then expands on that. So I will leave a link to that because that's a pretty cool piece of music to listen to. It's Purcell and then Britten adding to it. Benjamin Britten from Britain. Haha.